G'day guys and welcome to the Purebred Reds Adelaide United Fan TV. I'm Ellis Gelios and tonight I'm coming to you following the events of today where it was reported that Marco Kurz had his meeting with Adelaide United Chairman Piet van der Pol, and in that meeting it was established that Marco Kurz will not be the manager of our football club going into next season. It was decided that both parties had different views about the future, and so following on from Marco Kurz's explosive comments in his press conference on Thursday of last week, that it's finally now been decided he will not be the manager and the club will seek to appoint someone new in the off-season. It's been a really quite huge day. A lot of people saying a lot of interesting things online, and we'll get to all that very, very shortly indeed. Now, just before I go any further in this video, I just want to let you know that if you have anything you'd like to say in regards to your opinion when it comes to were you supportive of Marco Kurz, or are you supportive of the board seeking a fresh approach going into the 2019-20 season, please post that comment into the thread section and I will address it accordingly. Now, like I said, there's been a huge amount of things going on. Also, like and share the video just by the way to win a copy of Adelaide United by Loukas Founten. Apologies for last week's live video that had to be taken down. We're starting from fresh today in regards to that little prize giveaway, the Adelaide United book. So please like, share the video, and you will go in the running to win a copy. Now, I want to start things off by just clarifying that when it comes to the whole thing, Kurz, whether you love him or not, it's really, it goes a little bit deeper for me in regards to what happened today. The news is very hard to digest, and I think only for one reason. Whether you love Marco Kurz or not, what this now means is that we are going to progress into uncertain times. And personally, I'm the kind of person that hates dealing with uncertainty, and that's where we're heading at the moment. Unfortunately, we've got no idea about the kind of people that Piet van der Pol will seek to interview, or the people that are telling Piet van der Pol what to do. Of course, we don't know who those people are, but if it's the case that it goes above Piet van der Pol, then whoever it is that deals directly with interviewing applicants for the Adelaide United job, we don't know anything about who they're going to seek out whatsoever. We've just got nothing to base anything off. I'll get to who I think the club might look to appoint just by doing a bit of basic digging. But certainly in regards to where we're at right now, we've got no idea what direction we'll go in. And that just worries me ever so slightly, I have to say, because like I said, whether you love Marco Kurz or not, you know, we are heading in a certain direction, or I should say we were heading in a certain direction under his management. You can't argue with the fact that, you know, in 2 years, he looks like he's going to qualify us in 2 final series, as well as making 2 cup finals. He's won one of those, obviously the FA Cup at the start of this season. Now, just before I go any further, I just want to establish that for those that do watch this show regularly, ever since I started at the beginning of the current A-League season, I have really heavily endorsed Marco Kurz. There have been times where he's perhaps warranted a bit of criticism, and I haven't criticised him. And so people will think that I'm trying to sort of, you know, prejudice, you know, a mass section of other fans' views. And I just want to make it clear that I'm going to address both sides to this argument. So Marco Kurz is not a man without flaws. I feel like he does have a bit of tactical naivety at times. There's no question about that whatsoever. That's definitely one of the main things that, you know, if you're someone that is an eternal optimist and wants to trust everything the club is doing and wants to give the naysayers a reason to support what the club's doing by pointing out flaws of Marco Kurz. One of them is definitely that, he has put out some questionable starting teams in games that we just haven't performed in so far this season. And so there's point number one as to one of the reasons why Marco Kurz and Adelaide United parting ways might actually be a good thing. Reason number two, you sense that there's a bit of stubbornness when it comes to Kurz. He likes to persist with certain players. He certainly has favourites when it comes to putting out a team every week. And point number three is something that we did see in the initial advertiser article that came out to break the news today, which is that he's not hugely into endorsing the youth that we have at the club. Now, some people are a bit confused by this because obviously he has had to rely on a lot of young players this season, but there are people coming out and saying that's not through choice, that's because he's been forced to because of all the injuries that we've had. Different problem altogether. But yeah, he's actually been to one youth team game in the last 12 months, I hear. So in regards to blooding youth and having a clear plan when it comes to bringing players up out of the youth team, there's certainly question marks there. Does he communicate a whole lot with Paul Pezos, the youth team manager? I'm not sure that he does. I haven't heard that he does. So there's certainly legs behind Piet van der Pol coming out and indicating that he's unhappy with the outlook that Marco Kurz has in the youth setup. So they're really the three main sort of flaws, if you like, as to why it might be a good thing that Adelaide United and Marco Kurz are parting ways. Now, here's my biggest issue on the other side of the coin. In the press release that the club put out about 2 hours after the initial article came out, it's got a quote from Marco Kurz saying, very quickly within discussions, this isn't the actual quote, but he basically said very quickly within the discussions that I had with Piet, it became very clear that we don't share the same vision for the club. Now, here's where I have an issue, okay? We don't know a whole lot about our ownership. Piet van der Pol's been quite quiet on the whole, I feel, this season. A woman called Mary Weaver came out in the Red Army. I think it's actually Jason Cavey, the president's partner, came out and said that, we should really be backing the new owners because they made a lot of positive changes during the pre-season and, trying to bring people closer from yesteryear back to the club, etc., etc. That's all fine and well, I think, and it's a good point that she raised, but you've got to admit that Piet van der Pol and even Nathan Kosmina, the CEO of the club for that matter, have been very quiet, particularly in the last month when it certainly doesn't feel like everything is well at the club. It doesn't have that kind of vibe to it at all, does it? And, this is not taking into account whether I know anything more than anyone else. It's just a general feeling that we get. The team's been, really not in form at all. We've got 8 players coming off contract. Obviously, the whole thing with Kurz and his assistant, Filip Topalovic. There's a lot going on there, which suggests, that there's a lot of people that are not quite on the same page. Aurelio Vidmar leaving. Let's consider that one as well. The state of Playford, the training base, the players having to relocate to train at Oakton, Adelaide City's base. Now, I believe that's not really the club's fault, but just a lot of things that have been reported in the general news, which haven't really been addressed by the key figures at the club. Kosmina being one of those, the CEO, haven't heard anything from him, have heard only very small snippets out of Piet van der Pol. And the issue I've got is that if you're looking at this by isolating both parties, and I kind of touched on this in my video last week with Chris Adams in last week's preview for the Perth Glory game. If you're going to isolate both parties, so Piet van der Pol on one side and Marco Kurz on the other side. Marco Kurz has done what he's done for the club. He's a passionate guy. For sure he has his flaws, but he's human and no one's perfect in this world. A lot of people would suggest that Marco Kurz is perhaps the best we can do for the club of the magnitude that is Adelaide United. So if it comes down to really taking a side between Marco Kurz and Piet van der Pol, what exactly has Piet van der Pol done to suggest that we should trust the direction of the club and where he wants to go with it? Because there's a lot of things that just have a secretive kind of feel to them. We don't know what this vision is for the club, and I just feel like there needs to be transparency. And, Piet van der Pol came out and blamed Kurz's outlook on, not engaging enough with the youth team and the youth setup as one of the main reasons for why, we're going to part company with him. Well, I mean, quite honestly, there has to be a little bit more at play, and it just doesn't feel like that's been completely communicated. Now, when you take everything into account, one thing that's really kind of stunned me today is how divisive this has been within the fan base. So I actually expected that, 90% of people were very much supportive of Kurz. And maybe there were about 10% of fans that, for whatever reason, they're usually the same bunch of reasons, were willing to just trust the direction that the club's going into. Now, some of the sort of, in a nutshell, basically the reasons they have for that are that, the club's got a lot to do in order to get the infrastructure right, to go in the direction that it wants to go after the previous regime. And so just, bear with us, let the club do what it's trying to do. Contractually, there's a lot of obstacles. You can't just hire and fire, as though it's FIFA. Okay, that's certainly valid. So I'm just trying to basically put into perspective what both sides are arguing. But yeah, in a sense, I thought maybe, okay, there's 10% of the fan base that are willing to support the ownership and what they're doing, and 90% of fans are outraged. That's not actually the case. It almost feels maybe like 60-40. There's a lot of people that are actually saying, well, look, is Marco Kurz seriously the best we can do? Maybe it's not a case of just the ownership being all secretive and, having an untoward kind of feel about it. And it's actually just them wanting to do what's best for the club. And maybe Marco Kurz is not what's best for the club going into the future. I will also just acknowledge the fact that the new ownership did inherit Marco Kurz as a current employee. And that does have to be put out there. So, make of that what you will. But yeah, it's stunning how divided the fan base actually is. It's almost like no one's really sitting on the fence. Everyone's either completely outraged. I've seen a lot of, really fiery kind of remarks made by fans. A lot of people saying they're going to turn in their memberships. Is that a bit far? I don't know. I think if you're a paying member, you're entitled to say whatever you want to say. But there have been, that's been one of the more common things that people have raised in the direct aftermath of today's events. The fact that they're just not sure. Now, that's completely up to them. That's their prerogative. If they don't want to extend their membership, that's completely up to them because they love Marco Kurz. All I think everyone is asking for is a little bit of transparency, and it doesn't feel like we're getting a whole lot of it out of the club. That's my main issue. Now, secondly, after what was said today, we've got to worry a little bit as fans because of the fact that we are still very much alive this season. We're about to, hopefully embark on qualifying for the finals, do what needs to be done between now and the last 5 games, and get ourselves comfortably qualified for the finals. That therefore means that there's still potentially, by coming out and going to have his contract renewed, is that healthy at the moment to be doing that? Marco Kurz, I'm not saying he will, but he could now just stand idly by and not really care about anything. He's going to cop his wage every week. Whether or not the players, there's, infighting and people disagree with each other, he literally now knows he will not be given a new contract. So he can virtually do whatever he likes. He can stand by and just let it all unfold if he wants to. He and his assistant, Filip Topalovic, know that they're not going to be at the club next season. So unless you kind of try and suggest that, well, he needs to be auditioning to win a new contract at one of the expansion clubs, perhaps going into the future or back home or somewhere else in Europe. I think people are well aware of how good he is and what he has managed to do with some limitations as the Adelaide United manager of the past 2 seasons. So I don't feel like that's going to be much of an issue. He can literally stand around now, collect his wage and virtually not care, do nothing because he knows, and so does everyone, the air's been cleared, he's not going to be the manager next season. So by coming out and making this announcement, it just feels a bit rushed, a bit forced, and a little bit strange, I have to say. Certainly isn't something that I would have thought the club would endeavour to do, and to make it public that he's not going to have his contract renewed. I'm just going to read out a few comments before I get into the latter remarks that I plan on making. So got a lot coming through, hell of a lot of comments. So we'll start with Matthew Clark, who's tagged someone. All right, no worries. Darren Clark says Joe Mullen next manager. Joe Mullen, current Campbelltown City coach, did win the NPL last season, the entire NPL that is across Australia. So and is the former youth team manager of Adelaide United. Was an integral part of Aurelio Vidmar's coaching tenure when we went on that phenomenal run through Asia. He was the youth team manager, and because Aurelio Vidmar didn't have the necessary accreditation, Joe Mullen was the AFC Champions League manager on paper throughout a lot of the campaign that we went on. So, and obviously Daniel Mullen, his son, is a former Adelaide United player, as well as Matthew Mullen, who Joe Mullen is the uncle of. Matthew Mullen played for Adelaide United back in the early days as well, very briefly. Anyhow, moving on. Marty Keogh says Damien Murray, Aloisi brothers or Mark Rudin for next coach. Damien Murray apparently in talks with Comets to become their next manager. That could even be underway as early as from next week. So I really don't know about Damien Murray, and I don't know that he's got a whole lot of sort of an in with the club. There's been a lot of people in and out of Adelaide United since Damien Murray's heyday. So I'm not sure they'd go down that avenue. Anyhow, she says, Murray, the Aloisi brothers, or Mark Rudin. Mark Rudin's an interesting shout. A lot of people probably don't even remember that he played for us very briefly. He had an injury-plagued stint all the way back in 2009. But nevertheless, a former United player. Obviously, he's just been riding a massive wave of momentum this season at Wellington, really turned that club around, and there's talk now that he will sign on at Wellington if they do everything that is required to move Mark Rudin's family across to New Zealand from Sydney. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Mark Rudin, definitely a good shout. Aloisi brothers, no thank you. Ross Aloisi, ever since his grand final behaviour in 2006, has not been on good terms with a lot of people at Adelaide United. And John Aloisi, as a result of the way things were handled with Ross Aloisi post that 2006-07 6-0 humiliation to the Victory, decided not to sign with us when he returned from Europe and went to Central Coast Mariners instead, which was a huge slap in the face for the likes of us as fans. Darren Clark says, in regards to Marco Kurz, his sub's too late, poor picking Kiddo over Mili Uznic. Yeah, I mean, there's been a bit of that here and there, but I really don't think it's one of the things that's going to raise me off my chair and demand that Marco Kurz not sign a new contract and that we go in a different direction, because I think it's kind of more of a minimal thing. I think when he's got a full cattle available to him, Marco Kurz is, capable of putting out a good side that plays good football. Marty Keogh, again, a longer one, says, I'm happy with the decision. His tactics and decision-making are so wrong. His subs are late and some are wrong. He should go to more youth games and blood the youth players like Pacific and Stamatopoulos leaving the club. Just mind you. Anyhow, should be in the first team. I liked Kurz when he first came here and won us the FA Cup. But apart from that, he hasn't done much. If he doesn't concentrate on the rest of the season, we could miss the finals. Yeah, absolutely. We are only 5 points clear of Newcastle Jets, who still have 5 games to catch up on us. And they're playing Wellington this week. And unfortunately, both sides are going to take points off each other, which is just going to really make our situation even worse. Matt Round says, strip it back and start again. Build a team with a manager that can actually stay together. mostly at least, for a few years so we can fall back in love with our team and players. Tony Scarinci says, we are going backwards as a club. Crowds are down. Marco Kurz has done wonderfully well for what resources he had. Gordon McGill says, we don't have a youth setup. We only have 33 youth players. That is true. That was pointed out very recently. As opposed to other A-League clubs that have under 18s, under 17s, we only have a youth team and a youth reserves below the senior team. So, yeah, our youth setup is kind of really average. Matt Round says we don't have a choice but to have faith in the new management. Yeah, interesting, if you want to think that way. I mean, it is true, technically, but it doesn't mean that we can't ask questions. Chris Adams, got a lot of time for Chris. He says, I'm sad to see Kurz go because he's wonderfully passionate, hardworking, and has brought many fantastic results and another trophy to the cabinet, but we've played average football at best this season. Approach needed. Matt Round, he's saying. George Ragius, no stability, man, no honesty, just constant issues that the fans don't know about. Yeah, it feels a bit that way sometimes. Owen Gemeroth says, imagine if we somehow win the toilet seat with Kurz. Yeah, it wouldn't quite be the greatest comeback since Lazarus because, well, I mean, it probably would, but I just don't think it's possible. A lot of things went our way in 2015-16 and we had a massive, we're massively better back then than we are now, let's be honest. Owen Gemeroth, yeah. Matt Round says, realistically, Perth and Melbourne victory are so far in advance of us at the moment. It's horrible. Start again. I'm interested in seeing what the new management builds with a cleanish slate. And then Ben Fazilic says, Wellington won't get rid of Rudin easily. Yeah, all very valid. Keep commenting, guys. I do want to hear those views and I do want to address everyone's comment. Now, one other thing I forgot to mention about Marco Kurz that I'm not a fan of is that since he became the manager of the club, Cooper Stadium has really it's lost its sense of being a fortress. I commented before one of the fan cams that I did maybe a month ago that I just never feel confident going to Cooper Stadium anymore in the hope that we're going to win the game. Now, going back to Kosmina days, Rinnie Cullen's first season, Aurelio Vidmar's better seasons at the club, obviously Gombau. It always sort of, in the seasons where we were showing up, it felt like Cooper Stadium was rarely a place that we'd see a draw, let alone losses. It always felt like the kind of fortress that other A-League clubs craved and never had. Well, we've now well and truly lost that now. We've been better away this season than we have at home. That pretty much says everything. And it's just one of the worst characteristics that Kurz has seemed to bring this season and last season, just not being great at Cooper Stadium. So that's another thing to consider. Can we bring in someone that is going to have an entirely different approach, but at least bring back some kind of certainty when it comes to hoping that the team wins when we play at home? Because there have been a lot of times this season, maybe after a few surprise away wins, the people have showed up and we just haven't delivered. I can't remember of a recent example off the top of my head. I think it might have been the Wanderers, actually. The Wanderers where we lost 3-1. Everyone piled in there after the Raw game where we came back, and obviously the amazing comeback coming back from 3 down with 10 men, 1-4-3. Everyone stormed into Cooper Stadium and against Western Sydney Wanderers, expecting us to take care of them. It was a really poor performance. We lost 3-1, and ever since then we've been really poor, and it doesn't feel like the crowds are going to come back since then. So yeah, that just highlights something else, that highlights that Marco Kurz's tenure in terms of our home success has not really hit the heights that we'd like as fans. Cooper Martin has made a comment. Kurz has been tactically incorrect many times this season, so I'm not against the decision. We need to back the club in for this fresh start. Well, there you go. A lot of people actually, on my platform at least, supporting the decision of the ownership to do what they're doing. I think whether you support the decision or not, everyone has to agree that this could have been handled a lot better. Between Chris Adams and I, we sort of both formed the opinion that Kurz coming out in the way that he did, visibly frustrated in his press conference last Thursday, and kind of hammering the club in the way that he did, it just didn't, it really gave off a bad vibe. People started becoming increasingly more and more disillusioned. Those sort of, in-between fans that toss up every week, is it worth going to watch us at Cooper's or just watch off someone else's Foxtel Go account at home? It doesn't feel like we're going to be getting those kinds of people out between now and the rest of the season. Could potentially only be another 2 home games left if we don't make the finals. We do play Melbourne Victory, and I think it might be, I can't even remember the other team, but Melbourne Victory is one of the last ones that we play. It might be Wanderers or Raw. I'm not sure. I can't quite remember. But there is another team that we play before Victory. There's only 2 home games left though. If we don't make the finals, that is. We could still finish 4th. In which case, I think we would still have a home final left. So that would take it to 3 home games left between now and the remainder of the season to try and attract, as with took the fall for an NPL budget. Yeah, certainly a view that a lot of people are perpetuating, and I don't think you're entirely wrong, Lance. William Hickey, don't know what he's saying, and Owen Gemeroth says Wellington at home. Thanks for that, Owen. That's the other game. Pretty big one as well, obviously, against a fellow rival when it comes to finishing in those higher up places for the final series. Guys, if you've got any more comments that you'd like me to address, please throw those into the thread. It's been a hard day. To take this news in. It means obviously, an influx of changes coming into the club next season. I think personally, I just hope that we appoint someone that has, certainly a strong amount of credibility that all fans can get behind. In regards to who I think the appointment will be, I'd like to say I've got some kind of idea, but I don't really, in terms of, something that I factually know. But just by doing some basic research, if you go and look at the short history of Qingdao Red Lions, who are the other portfolio of our owners, the 3rd-tier Chinese club, they had a guy called Jan Pertvliet who managed them. Now, Jan Pertvliet, if you look him up, he's a legend of the Dutch national team. Managerially, he hasn't done a whole lot, but he's managed in Holland, some fairly big clubs in Holland throughout a fairly long period of time. He managed Southampton in 2009. I'm pretty sure they were in League One at the current time that he managed. But he's got experience in terms of at least being at a big club. Southampton are a big club in the UK, obviously, currently in the Premier League. But more recently is what's relevant. He managed Qingdao Red Lions in 2016. Now, he hasn't done anything since he left Qingdao. Is there a tie there between him and the current owners where he could be persuaded to, rejig his career and come manage in a completely different league, a fresh set of expectations for the club and for himself? Just if you do some basic digging, it is something that we could suggest is a possibility. I suggest looking him up. Jan Pertvliet is his name. It's a very complicated kind of name. In terms of other leads, no idea. Absolutely no idea. People are speculating off the sheer fact that the whole disregard of our youth setup with Kurz might suggest that the owners want to go down a completely different path and give someone like a Damien Murray a go, or even a Tony Vidmar, or someone that has ties to the NPL clubs in Adelaide, perhaps even a Joe Mullen, and just completely go that way. Bring back a familiar face that's not currently in a big job, that bringing kids up and have the best leads when it comes to bringing kids in from the NPL who look like they're genuine prospects. Adam says, last season Kurz won 5 home games out of a possible 13. This season we're 4 home wins. Amor managed 4 home wins in his second season and we finished 9th. Before that, it was 7 or 8 home wins per season with Amor, Gombau, and Kuzmina/Valkanis. What happened to Fort Hindmarsh? Yeah, absolutely, Chris. As I highlighted just previously, that is one of the issues, one of the main issues that I have with Kurz's reign, has been just the lackluster performances at Cooper Stadium. Got to definitely acknowledge that it hasn't been the kind of feel that we'd like at Cooper Stadium over the past 24 months. Owen Gemeroth says, I miss Bubba Diawara. Give him a farewell match against Victory on one leg. Hopefully it doesn't get to that, but if we're playing for pride, who knows? They might bring Bubba out just for a farewell. But in all honesty, Owen, I don't know that anyone knows where Bubba is at the moment. Yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of comments, guys. I feel like I've gotten everything off my chest that I wanted to. Now, I want to say that it's perfectly fine to have no issue with the fact that we're going to be parting ways with Kurz. If you are one of those people that is strongly in support of what the club's trying to do and trying to encourage everyone else to firmly get behind the club and just, be on the ride, all good and well. All those people, to their credit, have made very, very valid points over the course of the day so far. And, they're well in their right to suggest that. I just think, again, that everyone is craving a little more information because, like I said, right now, we just don't get a whole lot of communication out of the club. And it would just be nice to get all the members in, perhaps if not even just general fans, but at least all the members in at the end of this season, do one of those sit-downs like they did before the new ownership came in and actually just address a whole lot of questions. Open the floor to fans. I think that would be certainly something the club might want to do at the end of this season because right now, let's be honest, having done what they've done, and cut ties with Kurz, these new owners, whoever they are, if Piet van der Poel's not one of them, that is, let's at least just say Piet van der Poel themselves, to support and trust. Because, let's say a point, let's say 5 rounds into next season, we haven't won a game, we're not scoring goals, things look sluggish, they're going to be under the pump to really maintain relations, these new owners. So they're really going all out on the line, and at least that's one thing you could definitely say about Piet van der Poel. He's ballsy doing what he's doing. Because if you look into the media and how it's being reported around in the media, this whole thing with Kurz today, Fox Sports and SBS are really sort of in their coverage kind of questioning it, like, it's kind of farcical almost that we're doing this. So credit to Piet van der Poel in that sense that, he's definitely just pushed along with what the objectives are of the owners, which are not to maintain Marco Kurz as an employee and the coach, and to now just clear the air completely and fall on our sword perhaps in regards to all the negative comments that are being thrown around on social media. Let that peter out and then start afresh. During the off season, I suggest they're going to want to make a few big signings just to get everyone back on board, because there are a lot of people that are certainly threatening to cut their association with the club, at least in regards to being a member. So I would suggest it would be in their best interest to go out on the front foot, make at least maybe one big kind of signing, bring back a Socceroo or something like that, just to get fans back on board, or at least those fans that are asking a lot of questions. And I think everyone is in their right to ask those questions. Chris Adams says, just before I go, another unspoken comment from Kurz was the constant training injuries to players. Surely a byproduct of him overworking players in training. Well, there might be some substance there, Chris, but Playford obviously not being in the best of conditions right now might also be a factor there. Obviously, there's a sprinkler and irrigation issue there, and that was actually cited as one of the reasons why there have been a lot of injuries in a recent Tizer article, I think last week, which came out. So there you go. But on the whole, I think the club's got a lot of communicating to do. I just feel that way. I'm sorry. we could potentially still end up having a pretty bad finish to this season. I mean, imagine if we don't make finals. People are going to be in all sorts when it comes to, how fiercely they are questioning the motives of these owners. So, yeah, I just feel like they might want to go out and make a bit of a big splash early on when everything dies down. If we get there, obviously, or just the regular season, if we don't make the finals, they've got a lot of work to do, and they want to do that work quite quickly. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it from me. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like and share the video to go into the running to win a Bible of Adelaide United. I'm going to be putting that out as a general prize for a lot of future videos coming up. A lot of content coming your way on the Purebred Reds. We've got Cassandra Trepietti in this week to review the Central Coast Mariners game, and an unnamed guest that will be on to analyse whether we can get the job done in Gosford against Central Coast, who won their last game with Alan Stajic, now the manager. Guys, that's it from me. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon. All the best. Up the Reds. Cheers.